What's up, Saab fans around the world, and welcome back to another video, and Happy New Year to all of you. As you can see in the background right here, the work has already started, so this got a little bit twisted. I actually started this work right after Christmas. So the day after Christmas I started to tear the engine apart to be able to switch out the piston and rods, and I have prepared with everything. I had coolant, I had oil, I had new piston rings, new bearings, everything. So I have everything planned out, and I started to tear the engine apart. And when I got to the part where you should measure the tensioner for the timing chain, I took that out and I measured it, and it was 16 millimeters, and the full tension of the tensioner is like 18.5, 19 millimeters or so. But I think it's recommended that you change the timing chain after like 15 millimeters or so. I don't know what it's at when the timing chain is brand new, but we can check that later. So I didn't have a chain, and my first thought was, let's just go with it. We will install the piston and everything and run. And then I thought over and over again, and it's always better to do it like full send, do it completely. So as of right now, the engine is fully torn apart, so the block is just in the engine bay together with the gearbox. So I have read before that it's manageable to change the timing chain with the engine in the car. Some do it a real sneaky way because there are open chains that you can install, so you can just attach it to the old chain and rotate the crank, and then you have a new chain, voila. But all the parts around it are bad and very old. So let's just take a look at this. So here I have the balancing chain and the timing chain and all the guides and the tensioner for the balancing chain. So I'm gonna explain what we are about to do right now. But first, let me play the video as it was intended to be. So let's start from the beginning. So I hope everyone has had a great Christmas this year. It's a little bit different, but what to do? At least now we're gonna start. So the first thing we're gonna do is start actually from the bottom of the car. So the first thing we do before we disassemble anything is to pull the fuse for the fuel pump, which on my car is number 15. So now we're just gonna crank the engine. It might start for a couple of seconds, but then it will die since it doesn't get any fuel. Like so, that's enough. So now we're gonna continue with removing the front right tire, then jack up the car, empty out the oil, change the oil filter so we got a brand new one. We're also going to drain the coolant fluid. So all the fluids are done in the engine. Then we're going to start from the bottom by disassembling the downpipe and then remove the oil pan. And then we're going to start with the top, remove the head, etc. So we get to the heart of the engine and can change the piston and rods. Then we're going to assemble the new cylinder head that we have ported and machined and got the new springs and everything. And then we're just gonna mock up the new turbo and the new exhaust manifold that I got. We are not going to install the turbo right now because I need to get this car through inspection. So we're just gonna change the internals, so the piston and rods, the T5 piston and rods, and the camshafts. Then we're gonna install back the original turbo and the downpipe that I'm not running right now, since I have a cat on this one. So my idea is to get the new exhaust and the new turbo, then build another downpipe, because from the new turbo, here's the original TD04 15T turbo with this flange is the OEM one that's on the turbo, and then goes to 3.5 inch downpipe. So the new turbo has a V-band flange directly from 3 inch. Then I'm gonna make it up to 3.5 inch directly, and that exhaust downpipe I'm gonna build without the cat. So we're gonna have straight flow on the second one, so this will be for inspection purpose. But yeah, I'm not gonna go into detail how to remove every bolt. You have to figure out some of that yourself. But of course I'm gonna do a little bit of time lapse on and show you in detail on the things that are good to know. So this engine has 300,000 kilometers on it, which is quite a lot. So it's a good time to change piston and rods and also get new piston rings so it seals perfectly. And we're also gonna change, no, we're not gonna change, but we're gonna check the timing chain, how much the tensioner is out, because I haven't heard any weird noises or rattling from the chain at all, so we're not gonna change it right now. And also a big topic is to keep the balance chains or not. So I'm gonna touch up on that later when we get to that point. So as of right now, I'm just gonna jack up the car and start from the bottom, disassemble the downpipe, and then we will go on with the rest. So I have two tripods to be able to film that low angle underneath the car. Both of them are broken, so no low angles unfortunately. I have been doing some work down here. I have drained the oil, I have drained the coolant, and I have reattached a new oil plug, a new oil filter, and seal up the coolant plug. So if you don't know, it's up here. It's a green layer like tap that you just rotate, then the fluid will start to drain. And I of course have got the downpipe out, and this is probably the stage where you will run into issues if it's the first time you're doing this and you have the stock exhaust. I have my rebuilt, so it wasn't too long ago I had it down, so the bolts were not seized up or anything, so it was real easy to remove them. And back here I have a V-band flange, so it's just to undo the bolt and take it off. Super simple. Otherwise that could be a hassle for a couple of hours, because the bolts are always here at the middle pipe. They are always super rusty, so nothing to hold on to, so you usually end up just cutting it down. But now I have started with the oil pan, so I have got all the bolts out. Some of them are a little bit tricky here at the end, right here, but they are manageable. So to get the oil pan out, there is not enough room to just drop it down, so you need to push the engine a little bit to the side. So use a big like breaker bar or something to just force it to the other side. Then the pan will just drop right down. So since I don't have any tripod, I'm just gonna take down the pan and you will see later. So the oil pan is out, so now we have access to the bottom of the rods. But first we're gonna inspect the oil pan. I know that the previous owner has done the oil changes very good. He has actually done a lot of oil changes, which is really nice. The oil looked kind of good. And the oil pan, I have been taking down quite a few right now. And this, by just looking at it like this, it looks kind of good. But we will see how the engine is feeling. So this cover right here sits with T30 Torx. Doesn't look too bad. There is always some little gunk, but there is very little metal flakes. It's like one down there. So this is just to clean out, and we're gonna clean out all of the oil pan. Just thoroughly clean it so it's like no oil left whatsoever, the outside and the inside. It just makes it super clean to reinstall it later. So now that we have all access to the underside of the engine, we are going to start to disassemble like all things that are attached to the cylinder head. So the pressure pipe and everything, what we are going to leave in is the exhaust manifold and the intake manifold, because them are quite hard to remove while they sit in the engine. Not the exhaust manifold, but the intake manifold is a little bit of pain in the ass, but it could definitely be on to the cylinder head. Then we're going to remove this one and start disassemble the belt and the tensioner, and take a look at the tensioner for the chain, and then it start to lift off the cylinder head and switch into the new one. But first, of course, switch the piston and rods and everything goes with it. So now we have a pretty clean oil pan, so now it's just to reassemble everything. I just cleaned this off with some degreaser and a detailer brush to get in all corners. It don't have to be super amazingly clean. There are methods to get this like 2000% clean, but this doesn't matter. We're gonna put oil in it very soon again, so. And The pickup filter has been cleaned, which is the most important part. Almost everything disassembled around the cylinder head. So I have removed the bolts for the turbo. Everything on this side is disconnected. Everything is disconnected from the intake manifold. The injectors and the fuel rail are out. We have made some space here. The intake for the turbo is gone. So before we start to disassemble the top mounting for the engine, we need to put the engine into TDC, which is top dead center, where the engine is at the top. So at this pulley right here, you can see I have made some marks right up there. It's really hard to get on camera, but you see there is a marking on the engine block right there. And you also have a notch on the inside of the wheel that you can see. So when they line up, you have reached TDC. So now we're just gonna start to disassemble this part right here, and the engine will go down slightly. You could put a jack stand underneath if you like, but we are going to have to access the engine underneath after a while, so the easiest part is just to let it hang. It's totally fine. It won't fall as long as you have fresh mountings for like the gearbox and the rear engine mount. So we're just gonna start to disassemble this, and then you will see the engine start to lower a little bit. Then we will take off the cover, and yeah, then we will have access to everything, and then we will take the cylinder head off. So now it's time to remove the tensioner for the chain that sits down here. It's really greasy, but it contains two parts. One little screw with a spring on it that keeps the tension on the tensioner. So we need to remove that first with a 12 millimeter. And then the whole tensioner sits with a 27 millimeter. So we remove that afterwards, so the tension is at its place, so it don't get pushed out. And to access this, you need to just loosen this bolt a little bit for the pulley. You don't need to remove it, just loosen it a bit, otherwise it will interfere with the socket. So this is what a tensioner looks like. So as I said, if you keep the spring in it and lose the whole compartment, this will just push out, and you can't measure how beaten up or how weared out your chain is. I think in the instructions, if you measure this over 18 millimeter, I think you definitely need to switch out the chain. So we will see what state mine is in. the cylinder head is out, so now I have just scuffed off this surface a little bit and cleaned it off with some brake cleaner, since I still have the pistons in. So cleaning first, also on the underside. Cleaned up all like sealing surfaces before we do anything. So now I'm just gonna pop out the old piston and rods. Then we're gonna, I don't know the English word for it, but you grind off the cylinder to get a nice surface for the new piston rings to like wear into. So right now we're gonna prepare the new piston and rods together with the piston rings, and we're gonna measure the gapping on the piston rings. I'm gonna show you one, then you have to do all the others yourself. But as of right now it's going pretty good. And then we're gonna transfer the exhaust manifold from this cylinder head, also the intake manifold, to the other one that we have refurbished. So I'm not really gonna show you this since I don't have any working tripod, but it's just to undo the bolts. I can show you on this one. Saab has some different screws, either it's this one right here or it's the hex bolt or nut. But you just undo this and just pull them apart, then you can knock up the piston and just take it out the block. So the pistons are out and the walls in the cylinder looks amazing, no scratches whatsoever. Will be really nice to just refurbish the surface and then drop in the new pistons. So here we have them, and this is what you want to see when you pick them apart. Nice layer of oil film on the bearings, which means the engine has been well lubricated and everything works. So here is a little comparison. T5 to the left, T7 to the right. So they are a bit weaker, the T7, but also lighter to like drop fuel consumption and make the engine more efficient. But these will hold up for more power, and it basically speaks for itself. It's just so much more massive. And also the rods is a good upgrade. Of course they are a little bit heavier, but a little bit more solid. I have seen some crooked T7 rods. So now we are back at regular time, and as you could see, we got the cylinder head out, all the piston and rods, cleaned out the oil pan. Gonna put some color on the valve cover to make it nice. And we had the timing chain here. So the tensioner was out 16 millimeters, which is quite a lot. This is like its max, and as I described earlier, you disassemble first the spring and then the tensioner, then you measure between right here up to the head, and at the max it's like 19 millimeters and mine was 16, so just as good to change it. So what we are going to do now, or I should just say how I did to get it out first, because some of you might be interested in doing this on your car. But let me just say this, don't do it. If you have a possibility to lift out the engine and do it outside, 10 times better. But if you really have to, you could do it in the engine, and this is how I did it. So first off, I think the instructions for doing this job inside the engine is if you have the cylinder head on, then you have something to attach like hooks to, and you can lift the engine. Because what you have to do is on the gearbox, you have the mounting right up here. That's one of the mounting points for the engine. So you release that first, then beneath it you have another. You have this one right here. So you take that away also, so you could slide the engine as far as you can to the right side. Then you have like, I don't know where I have everything, but then you have this holding the gearbox to the subframe. So that has to go also to be able to move the engine sideways. And this is the rear mounting that is also attached to the subframe, that has to go. So everything is loose at the back of the engine and at the front of the engine and at the transmission. So then you have to lift it up, push it to the right as far as you can. Then you have to disassemble the parts that's on this side to be able to get the plate off. And on that side as well you have to loosen it a little bit so you can get it out, because it's attached in some points. So when you have it out, there are a lot of bolts that sits in this cover right here. So this is the one to get out. There you have the oil pump and everything. So now I have drenched it in degreaser to get all the dirt off, so we will make it really nice and clean. But the problem gets to get to all the screws that are attached or bolts. You need a T40 Torx, and you could get to the bolts, there is no problem, but you have to lower it and take the lower ones out, then raise it and take the higher ones out, and you have to have the right tools. So it's a little bit of mix. I use this one right here with a T40 Torx that is really small and narrow so you can get to it, and I also had a bigger 1/2 inch to get some of them out as well. So when you got them out, you have to raise the engine a little bit, not fully but a little bit, and then you have to take it out underneath the car. So I had to disassemble the height sensor for the xenon lights and everything. Then I just barely got it out down here, so it was really hard, but then there was no problem to get like this out and get the chain off. It's pretty obvious how everything sits. So you disassemble this cover, this protects the chain from not get loose from the sprocket. So you lose that one, and then you could take the timing chain off. First you take off the balancing chain. So my initial thought with this build was to keep the balancing chain, but since we have balanced the piston and rods and I had to change the timing chains, then I thought like, what the hell, I will go for it. So I'm deleting the balancing chain, and what you will have then is you will have a more freely revving engine. Because normally the balancing axis spin twice as much as the crankshaft. So instead of 1 revolution, they have 2 revolutions. So 3000 RPM in the car will be 6000 RPM on the balancing axles. And one is here. And one is down here. So the benefits, you will get a little bit more power because you will not be having the crank to pull around the balancing axis as well. It's just the engine alone. And if you do it the right way, you should pull out the balancing axis, push in the bearings. I think it's 8 millimeters. Then you need something to block off the oil ways in the block. So the benefit you get then is you get a slight increase in oil pressure, which is nice to have, but it's not super important. So I know a lot of people that doing this the wrong way, just snap the balancing chain and pull that out. And what you risk by doing then is down here is the oil feed for the tensioner for the balancing chain, the little hole in the middle there. So if you just cut the chain off, you will get the function, you will get a slight increase in horsepower, maybe 5 horsepower, I don't know, depending on what your level of tuning is. But you will get a little increase in power. But if you just cut the chain, then there be a riskful moment that oil pressure pushing out this tensioner right here, this might plop out, and if this is gone, then you will have no oil pressure in the engine, and then your engine might just break totally. So that's not a good idea. So we're gonna take this, and I have made like a template, so I'm gonna cut out a plate to seal off the hole, and I'm gonna use some silicone behind it so it gets sealed perfectly. What you could do also is you can thread in an M6 in the hole and take some Loctite on it and just install it right there so there won't be any oil leak. The axles could still go on. So here you have the idler pulley and you have the balancing axle and the balancing axle, and those could be still in the engine. They will just carry on a little bit of weight, but they will not rotate, so they do not serve a purpose anymore. As of right now, I have only spoken about the benefits of doing it. The negative part of it is you could get really bad vibrations in the car. So if you daily your car, this is nothing you just want to do. If you go real high horsepower output, it's a good thing because it's one less thing to break. And the balancing chain is really tiny. As you see here, it's smaller than a bicycle chain, so to have one less part to failure in the engine when you run high horsepower is a good thing. So since we have balanced all the piston and rods, the right thing would be to balance the flywheel together with the crank and everything, but that is way overdue for us right now. So I have read tons of comments on forums and stuff and talked to people, and some say you get really bad vibrations, some say you don't get any at all, some say that on T5 engines it's not so much if you do it, and on T7 engines you get a little bit of annoying vibrations, and some say don't do it if you're gonna daily the car. This is like my fun car and track car, so it doesn't matter too much to me. Of course it's not too fun if it vibrates a lot, but I think this will be really good. So if you want to do it, it's still manageable, but it's a ton of work to get to this point where the engine hangs everywhere. So I have like used all of the tools in the garage, and I have stuff everywhere, more than I was supposed to have. So if you just want to do the piston and rods with the engine in the car, it's not that big of a deal. It's a pretty quick job. You get pretty scared of it when you look at it the first time, and I have got a lot of comments from people talking about, oh, I don't have knowledge to do it, but I didn't have it at first either. So you do, and you learn, and then you do it again, and you get better and better each time. So as of right now, this is my third or fourth, I think it's the fourth, like T5 T7 hybrid build, and as of right now I haven't had to change the timing chain anytime. So this is my first, so I didn't feel like losing all the bolts and so on, because it took me like 4 hours to get to the point where I'm at right now. And as of right now I have ordered the parts, so I got the new belt, and I got some new pulleys coming in, because there are two ways that the belt could go. There is one long way, and there is one newer, shorter way. So I ordered the shorter. So we will delete one idler on the side as well, and brand new timing chain and new guides for it as well. So we have some work to do, and then we're going to transfer some parts from this cylinder head to the new one that we have right here. It's very well hidden, so it don't get any dirt on it or dust. So what I'm going to do as well is, on the cylinder head that we fixed, I have got a lot of comments about these tappets that we fixed so that they flex. I'm gonna show you in the next video how they should be stored during a refurbish of your engine. So they are supposed to be upside down and in an oil bath. And the good thing about having this much time, because now I'm waiting on parts, and it's the weekend, so I won't have them delivered until Monday, and then I start to work. So the engine will be fully assembled probably next weekend. So by the time I'm waiting, I'm gonna refresh some parts that are going back in. Something a workshop won't do for you, so I'm going to put some new paint on the valve cover, and there are some other things as well that you could just make a little bit more nice. So this was a pretty weird start to this engine build, but I think it will turn out great in the end. And as I said before, we are all doing in this together. So you learn from my mistake, and if you watch the videos, you are with me the whole journey on this build, so you don't have to do the same mistakes that I do right now. So the best thing about when you start this build, take out the tensioner and measure the timing chain before, so you know what's up before you do this work, because when you have everything apart, you want to do it the right way and fix everything, not just just do the piston and rods, and then you end up having to change the timing chain just a couple of months after. That's pretty much useless, so it's good to have everything in order. So that's it for this video. This will be part 1 of the engine build, so we will have a part 2 really soon, in a week or so. But as of right now, there was a lot of talking going on, but it's very much needed information that you need to prepare the build, and information that you need on your coming tuning journey. So please leave a comment down below if you have any question regarding this build, or if you have any further tips, because what I have learned doing this road to 500 horsepower, especially with the cylinder head, there was like, I think I could have made just one video on the tappets, because the tappets or the lifters require some work when you lift them out, and the right way to turn them and how to clean them inside and out. So you learn by doing. That's the only way to go around. So no one knows everything from the start. That's just the way it is. We are born and then we learn until we die. That's the way of life. So if you do, you learn, and if you don't succeed the first time, then you learn, and the next time you will get better. So it's wrong to say that, oh, you have all the knowledge, but I have walked my way to come here as well, and now I have a garage to work in, which is amazing. But just a couple of years back, I was standing at a parking lot switching parts in my engine, and I just had one car and we used it as the family car, so there was a quick change of parts and then have the car running the next day again, and all that comes with it, bad weather and everything. But everybody walks their way of life. That's just the way it's going down. So I hope you like this video and enjoy the content, because it's a lot of work to produce this and share it with you guys. But I'm super stoked about the new year, new opportunities, and many exciting things to come. So please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you soon again. Bye.